Thank you, Phil. Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm an alcoholic. Really honored to be here with you guys today in Tennessee, not too far from my home. I'm in Kentucky. I'm really grateful to be sober today. And yeah, if you're new, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I still remember my first meeting like it was yesterday. I was in this church, like side room with all fluorescent lighting, and the meeting was packed with people. And I remember being so nervous because it was one where they go around the room and introduce themselves. So I remember watching everybody going all the way around the room, and my heart started pounding. Because see, I needed a drink to even look at you. I needed a drink to speak to you. I needed a drink to get out of the house. And here I was, stone cold sober. I'm worrying there's something on my face. I'm not going to get up to walk across the room to get coffee. God forbid, no, because you all would look at me. And I just remember just being absolutely terrified. And then what happened? People started to talk. And they talked about how they felt on the inside. And they talked about being afraid. They talked about being insecure. And I was hooked. I immediately fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. I remember all my life, like I was always on the outskirts of different groups. I had friends in every group, but I was never really fully in any of the groups. You know, I was just kind of separate from, always kind of felt like the oddball a little bit on the outside of everything. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like, oh my God, there's something going on here. And I would go to meetings in early sobriety, and I'd get there and the topic would be about something that I desperately needed to hear about. And I literally thought you guys somehow found out what was going on with me and then got together and decided that's what the topic was going to be, because it was about something I needed to hear. I mean, I remember thinking that. It was crazy. So I got sober January 3rd, 1988. I was 21 and a half years old. And I've never had to go back out. I've never had to drink. You know, somebody said to me, they were told that relapse happens for everybody. No, it doesn't. You don't ever have to drink again. I have never had to drink again. I am so grateful for that. I haven't always been a very active member of AA. I've definitely had my years where my life was way too busy for me to do anything, to go to meetings or do step work or sponsor anybody or anything that we're taught to do here. And I feel very lucky that I made it through those years. I was just talking to a sponsee about, she's going to do her steps 8 and 9. And I know that that's kind of where I got stalled my last run through the book. Because I do 10, 11, and 12, but I like to go back through from the beginning of the book, every few years and kind of be formalized with the whole process again. But, I realized that I'm really grateful that I've never had, my kids have never had to see me drink, but they've definitely seen me as a dry drunk and not having emotional sobriety. In fact, I don't think I ever even heard that term. I don't know when I first heard it, but it certainly wasn't in the early years, definitely not that. I was joking with somebody recently. I don't have any kind of amazing drunkalog stories, but when I first got to AA, I was very confused. I didn't get here because I thought I had a problem with alcohol. I went to an Al-Anon meeting first. I had a problem with a relationship. My dad said, you're a child of an alcoholic, maybe Al-Anon would help you. So I went to the Al-Anon meeting, and he had told me about the mental obsession. And I sat there, and the whole time I thought about how I wanted to get high all day, but I knew I couldn't be high for Al-Anon. I just knew somehow that was wrong. I could be high for anything else. Christmas at my grandmother's, anything. I could get away with it, but definitely something seemed wrong with doing it for Al-Anon. And I had friends, I had run into some friends. I was home on Christmas break from college, and I'd seen some of my friends at a party on New Year's Eve, and they were already in AA. And they said, and I said, oh, I'm going to go to Al-Anon. They said, we're going to be at the same church. Why don't we all go out afterwards? So I remember sitting in that meeting thinking about what my dad said about the mental obsession, that I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. See, I never thought about it. I just did whatever I wanted. I made sure that I had what I needed. I still do that. You never run out of groceries in this house. Okay. If there's something I like and I want it, I will make sure that it's always stocked. You know what I mean? And I was the same way with alcohol and drugs. I always had what I wanted, so I could do it when I wanted to, but I didn't understand that there was something wrong with what was going on with me. I just knew I always seemed to make bad decisions. I I'm 56. So back when I was in college, you had a lot of shame when you did things that you didn't plan on and ended up in places you didn't plan on with people you didn't plan on being with. And I did a lot of that and I had a lot of shame, and I got to, because at first alcohol was fun. It was great. It was just awesome. I loved it. I could talk to you. I could laugh. I could dance. I could, everything you ever hear about. And now, just like it says in Bill's story, it turned like a boomerang. And now it's making me do things that I feel ashamed of. I wake up the next morning and I feel this cloak of shame, this blackness, this filth, this dirty feeling. And for me, marijuana was also part of my story, because you could start doing that earlier in the day. It was more accepted in college that you could do the quote wake and bake, and you could do that all day. Because see, you couldn't really drink early in the day because that's not good. Unless there was a football game or it was spring break. There are all these rules, so that you weren't a person with a problem. But I couldn't look at people in the eye anymore, and I would be walking to class and I remember, and they'd say, "Oh, hey, Elizabeth." And my first thought would be, what did they see? I would feel dread just streak through my body. Like, oh my God, what did they see? What did I do? I was one of those people that I blacked out all the time. I'd black out for part of the night. I'd remember part of the night. Also, alcohol, hold on, my cat never wants me unless I'm speaking. No. She'll climb up on me on my back. I was the oldest in my family, so there were a lot of expectations on me. I was my dad's daughter and I was smart like him. And my dad got an almost perfect score on his college entrance exam. So this was high praise. And I got kicked out of 2 high schools for drinking. When I started drinking and smoking marijuana, I went from an A student to a C student, like within a semester. I just didn't care. I was running away and I didn't know I was running away. I just thought I liked to party. I found out probably a year into sobriety that there were a lot of things going on that I ran away from, and used alcohol. And then, like the book says, I crossed that magical line where, it was just so much my solution but I didn't want to see it. But we'll get to that. I was a late bloomer, and that's such a part of my story too. I feel like I'm a late bloomer. I feel like I've learned stuff about this program. I'm 34 years sober, and I feel like I didn't learn a lot of things until I got on Zoom, literally. Like, they're all in the book. It's all here, but I didn't hear it, and I didn't learn it. But we'll get to that. But, I was bullied in middle school. My mom and dad are alcoholics. They got divorced when I was about 6. My mom remarried a bipolar man. I didn't know that was his diagnosis, but I definitely lived with that. So there was a lot of chaos. I was left alone to take care of my sister a lot. I have a sister, she's 2 years younger. And so I was like a little adult, over responsible. And I knew I could always count on being smart. You're smart like your dad. I definitely got that. And I knew that was something I could count on as a human being, with my human resources. We never heard about God. My mother was Catholic. She was tired of it. This was I was born in the late 60s. So late 60s, early 70s, my mother got into a lot of stuff, the hippie, the free love, all that kind of, and she didn't want to teach us that. So we literally never heard anything about God unless there was a tornado warning, which you have in my part of the country. So I didn't really have any concept of that either. I just remember being pretty lonely as a child. I read a lot of books. I wrote a book about a girl that was happy and had self-esteem and friends and a boyfriend and nice parents. Meanwhile, my mom and my stepdad would fight, break up, get back together, break up, get back together. One time he came in and swept the entire dinner. She cooked dinner. She baked a cake. She never did any of that. She'd done it that night though. And he came home and he was so mad because I guess he wasn't included that he swept everything off the table and it went crashing to the floor. She would regularly take us out of our beds in the middle of the night to leave to go stay somewhere else. And so what do you think I'm left with? I'm controlling. I want to know what's going to happen. I need to know what's going to happen. And if I don't know what's going to happen, if I'm in any situation where I'm not in charge, or I know how I'm going to be able to plan this out and make everything happen, then I'm super uncomfortable, you know? So it's real interesting. I spoke to a man not that long ago about what the process of the 12 steps is about. And he laughed and he said, that sounds like the opposite of what I've always done. I'm like, yep, exactly. Because he's like, I run businesses. I'm really, you know, I'm a planner, I'm a manager, I'm and all this. And I was like, it's preaching to the choir. I get it. You know, if I got a tattoo on my hand, it would be let, you know, as in let God be in charge, you know, that thing. I didn't understand any of this. I got sober. I got into therapy. I loved therapy. I learned a ton. I read all the books that came out in the 90s, the John Bradshaw, Melody Beatty. I am so grateful for that learning. I cannot say enough about the fact that I landed in this place, because growing up in a dysfunctional family, they tell you all this stuff is normal. So why do I have this pit inside me? Why am I totally needy and dependent on relationships? Why, you know, why all these things? I get sober and I still have all this baggage. What's going on? So, you know, in the 5th step, it talks about us being thorough. I'm grateful that I went through that process with a professional to help me be thorough and see the things that I was carrying, because I don't think that I could have seen them. I don't know. That was my experience. I did a lot of therapy early and did a lot of inner child healing work, group therapy. I would hear other people talking about things and crying about the things that were normal in my house that I was told were normal. Literally 2 years ago, my sister got arrested for assault and being drunk. And my mother said, this is normal stuff. Said that. I was like, oh my God, you just shed so much light on my childhood. Thank you. Like, no, it's not normal. But when someone's told it's normal, then I have all this baggage. I don't even know that I have it. So I'm so grateful. Like the person who told me, you know, it was 14 months sober. I felt like a little kid. I felt exposed. I didn't know what was wrong. And somebody, this really dear, amazing man named Joe W., he lives in Sedona. He was like my surrogate dad. I could cry talking about him. He was the first person that told me it was okay for me to have my feelings that I was having about anything. And he said, it's time for you to go to therapy. And I'm so glad he did, because there was a lot there. I learned about healthy boundaries and nurturing, communication, like just so many things that have made it possible for me to have the life that I've had. But it's not 12-step recovery. And when I was about 14 years sober, I started to lose everything that I got from being sober. My business, my marriage, my home. I had a beautiful little house, so cute. You know, I got all these things, you know, all through my 20s. You know, I had my own business. I got on TV and the paper for my work, and everything was great, you know. And my first husband, he was in another 12-step program, and we were like little Mr. and Ms. Recovery, you know, and we were going to lots of meetings. And then guess what happened? Oh, we had kids. We forgot to schedule sitters. We stopped going to meetings. Life got busy. And we both got selfish. And I lost that marriage. When I was 14 and a half years sober, I hit another bottom. I was in a relationship that was very not healthy. And I mean, we would fight till 4 o'clock in the morning. I was useless for work the next day. I was so focused on making this thing work in my life to make me okay, that like I got my car repossessed, I got my utilities turned off. Like I was not paying attention to my life. I had no program and didn't even know it. And one night this woman asks me to sponsor her. God knows why. I have no idea still. I don't know where she is. I don't know if I ever saw her after that night. And I said yes, but I knew you needed to have a sponsor to be a sponsor, and I didn't have one at that time. And I went to this meeting. I was going to go to this one meeting, but I was late. I end up at this other meeting that I don't know anybody from this meeting, but I'll just call ladies from the other meeting this week. I walk in, standing at the podium is this woman that I got sober with. She meant so much to me. And we had both done all the, you know, the AA meetings I went to early. They were known in Louisville. They called them the touchy-feely meeting. We were all in adult children of alcoholics therapy. And after this 12 steps were read, that's the last you saw of AA. Okay. It was more like a therapy session. I love him, and that's part of my story. But I walked in and she's at the podium and she says, I was 15 years sober and didn't have a God of my understanding. And all of a sudden, I just get chills every time I tell this part, because everyone went blurry. And I realized that's what was wrong. I'd hit this place with this relationship I had been in, and I just had no self-esteem. It was like dating my mother. Actually, I dated my father many times, but not my mom. That was worse. Some of you will get that joke, I hope. But I remember sitting there and I thought, oh my God, I could write a book about every reason why I'm in this situation, but I still can't do anything about it. I keep going back. It's like trying to use an arm I don't have. And I always tell this because it was the first time that I hit a place where I felt powerless, literally powerless. I sat there bawling, thinking about all the knowledge that I had, all the things I'd learned, and yet I couldn't stop what I was doing. And that was the same week I ended up at that meeting, and I met my sponsor. Her name is Camille. She's still my sponsor 20 years later. She's moved all over the place. She used to speak at all the Fellowship of the Spirit conferences years ago. She came out of Denver. I didn't even know till I got on Zoom how lucky I am. This woman married a lawyer, moved to Louisville, and taught all kinds of people the big book. And she said, if I'm going to be your sponsor, here's what I'm going to do. Or here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to at least 3 meetings a week, get a home group, get a service position. We're going to do homework out of the big book every week. And if you cancel on me 3 times without a good reason, then I'm not your sponsor anymore. And so we proceeded to do it. And she had me writing and writing and writing and writing from the title page. I had never done this before. All I'd ever written down was the 4th step. I'd never done writing in the 1st step before. And because I was 14 years separated from alcohol, she had me writing about the unmanageability of my life at 14 years. And she had me looking at, when things like in where it says things like we could not separate the true from the false. Well, where are you doing that in your life today? Not 14 years ago. She emphasized that I needed to have a new experience, and that I had to have a personal experience, and that I had to see what alcoholism looks like on me, so that I know when I'm in trouble, for example. She said, and I know why I care. Why do I care about doing any of this? And I wish I could tell you I finished my work with her. I didn't. I'll tell you that in a minute. But when I got to the end of chapter 3, I was so miserable. And I remember saying to her, because that never happened to me before. I said, why am I so miserable? She said, because you need to have no place else to go but God. And I hear people talking about the need for a surrender, or how do you make a surrender, or what do you do? And it's like, you can't force a surrender. All you could do is try to look at the truth as hard as you can. If I can look at the truth, which is hard, I love that on page 25. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling. I could quote that whole thing, right? The leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings that the process requires for its successful consummation. I still hate it. I still don't want to do it. But until I look at the truth, I'm going to choose my way because I'm lazy and it's comfortable, even if it's painful. I'm just going to keep doing things my way. And the other thing that she did was, we were talking about the 4th step in a meeting earlier. She made sure I did a thorough 3rd step first. She had us read page 60 to 63 in the book every day for a week and write down, how am I doing that everywhere in my life? And when I sit down and put stuff on paper, something changes. I see more comes out. I remember the first time I wrote down how much I used. I had no idea. I didn't think I drank that much. Oh my God, yes, I did. Once I sat down and took some time with it and wrote it down on paper, it's like, oh my, how can you ignore this now? I can't ignore it now. And that's the point, right? If I can finally see what I'm doing. But see, I don't want to, because really I'm terrified of changing. Because why? Because where's God? He's not standing right next to me. You're wanting me to trust this thing I can't see. I don't even understand. I don't know what it is. That's what you got for me? And I really I have gone through a really hard year. I'm telling you, I had not thought about drinking since 2006. I thought about it twice this summer. I have a very new respect for how serious this thing can be. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I didn't finish my work with her. I went on, I got pregnant with my third child, you know, a bunch of stuff in life. And then in 2016, there were some changes in my family that were really painful. I don't want to go into them, take time with that, but I was sitting there one day and I realized that my program sucked. I couldn't stop thinking about something that was a resentment, and I wasn't present for my child. And that's one of those ways, that's what alcoholism, that's a red flag for me, when I can't be present for my children, because I have half visitation. So if I can't be full on with them when they're here, then I know my program's in trouble. And I made it back to a meeting, and I started going back to meetings. And I met my husband, Rob, my former husband. And I'd never been with another alcoholic. I'd never been in a relationship. I mean, I was with somebody in 12-step recovery, but he did that. He did well in his recovery. He didn't need my help. And I got with somebody who, you know, was a little bit less active in pursuing his recovery. And I don't want to, you know, was recorded. So, but let me just say, it was a great challenge for me. It has brought me a lot of new experiences and a lot of new feelings. I want to understand all my emotions. I want to understand everything so I can control it. And it's been just, there have been so many things but anyway, 2 years ago, when the pandemic hit and a lot of people got on Zoom, I started to hear some different messages. First of all, when I was a single mom for years, I didn't go to very many conferences, but I would hear of these speakers. So the first thing I started to do was I started to run around and listen to all these great speakers. And I started to hear a message that I just never heard here. You know, where I was going, I'm not saying this is true of my entire city, although I have no idea, but where I was going, it was like you graduated at the 9th step. People would even say, yeah, the 10th step's fine, but I'll go back and do a 4th every year, you know. What I understand about it now is so different. If you have a big book around and you've never seen page 52, there's a thing they call it the bedevilments. And it says, we were having trouble with our personal relationships. We were a prey to misery and depression. We could not control our emotional natures. We could not be of real use to other people. And I am that way, drunk or sober. And if I'm that way sober, I'm going to drink again. And I didn't know. I started going to this group. Okay, they have a specific format, like some AA meetings and some AA groups kind of have different focuses. Well, this group, they don't do drunkalogs, yesterday's problems, or blaming other people. We only talk about our alcoholism as it looks in the day that we're in, and how do we treat it in the day that we're in. Okay, and there's all these people there with decades of sobriety talking about their mind. And on page 23, it says, you know, this isn't about getting sober, it's about staying sober, right? Most of us in this meeting today have not picked up the bottle today. So why would we ever do it again? What's going on, right? That curious mental blank spot. I love the words they came up with in 1939. But when you look at the stuff about, you know, misery and depression, the word anxiety wasn't used then. But anxiety, fear, talk about fear, this stuff I am running around with. I have a friend who says that it's like a vulture waiting for you to wake up. And it's like, what are we going to think about today? Let's think about how unappreciated we are at work. Hey, let's think about how, you know, Sharon doesn't like me. Like whatever it is, my brain can latch onto it. And then I'm obsessed and I can't let it go. It's like a hamster on a wheel. And so this group was talking, and one day, some of you have heard this story. One day I'm in the grocery store, and this grocery store thing was an ordeal. Okay. The baggers in Kentucky don't care about the environment. I can bring them 6 reusable shopping bags. They don't care. They'll put a few things in and then start getting the plastic out. And I would get upset. My chest would feel tight. My neck would feel tight. This became a thing in my life. My husband didn't want to come with me to the store. It was always and then I'd watch them. If they'd start to put the potato chip bag on the bottom, oh, forget it, and I want to manage and control this entire thing. And it's an ordeal, and it's a negative part of my life. And I'm walking there, and one day, all of a sudden, boom, the light bulb goes off. This is what they're talking about. This is untreated alcoholism, which is a term I never heard before Zoom, untreated alcoholism. I am living as an untreated alcoholic right now. I literally remember being 28 years sober and thinking, because I was crazy in my life, and I would walk around restless, irritable, and discontented, right? And I know the book, I can quote the book, but I still can't see it in my life, even though I'm living it, because I can't see myself. I'm not paying attention, because if I do a 4-step once a year, what am I doing the rest of the year? Even if I'm doing the 10th or 11th once a day, what am I doing the rest of the day? And I learned this phrase that I love. This is one of my favorite little quotes. It's watch all day, pray all day. Becoming spiritually awake means that I watch my thoughts all the time. And then I ask for the power to come and help me. What power is that? Honestly, I still don't know. I really don't know. My experience with my God has come from doing. It's come from the actions in this program. When I do things, when I live these principles in my life. So we learn these principles in this work that we do, working the steps, like responsibility, integrity, kindness, love, tolerance. I mean, all these wonderful things. You can find lists of them. You can look it up. And I try to put these into practice in my life, even though my ego hates it, and I'll give you an example in a minute. God shows up and helps me. When I focus on the 10th step is all the time. I was just reading about it before the meeting. It's as we go along. It's all day. So when I start to get these disturbing thoughts in my head, I can immediately do something about it. I don't have to wait. And guess what happens when I do that? Oh my God, my brain gets clearer. It's so crazy. So that when things do come up that are chaotic or difficult or challenging, no longer am I thinking about the past, the future, whether you like me, what I'm going to do about the shopping bags, I'm present. And I can be present for people, and I can see you for the first time. I can see how I'm affected. Oh my God, I used to step on people's toes. And of course, here's a famous AA front of a sentence. All I did was I was trying to help. I would always get in trouble from helping. I have to watch that. I have to change it to thoughts, turn my thoughts towards someone I can help, because that's a tricky word for this alcoholic, and think, what's important to you? What matters to you? How do you feel? What is your experience of me? To actually consciously think about you. And it's an effort. And that's the other thing about this stuff. I was one of those people that could take a test or study for the test the night before the test and get an A. It doesn't work that way. I thought, will I ever walk through some magical doorway, step 3 doorway where I'm done, I'm just great all the time? Never happened. It's like, I looked up the word vigorously. We vigorously commence to live this way of life, how it says it. And that's active. I have to keep taking the actions. And I love 60 to 63, but I can't see it, because I'm just so connected to why I think I'm so attached to the outcomes of everything. So attached, because I know what needs to happen. I have this wonderful sponsee. She's 18 years sober, and she's doing everyone's jobs at work, and they're all mad at her, and she can't figure out why. She's starting to see it now. We've been talking about it, but it's I think I'm helping people, and they didn't ask for my help. The other thing about staying in the moment is in practicing, really it's my step 3 decision all day long, all the time, is that I used to always have to answer all my own questions and fill in all the blanks. I needed to know the answers. I needed to know the outcome. I would try to affect an outcome. I remember when I was single and dating, and if I started to like them, but I wasn't sure if they liked me back, sometimes I would just end it anyway, just to be sure, stuff like that. Whatever I can do to be in control and be in charge. And then getting on Zoom and kind of hearing this kind of it was new to me message, about practicing this all day long and every moment. I had to learn to live in the question marks and not have answers, and not wrap things up, and with a little bow and have it all done, but give it to God, give it to God, give it to God, give it to God all day long. Here you go. I don't know what's going to happen with this. And another quote that I love from my sponsor, she says, God will find ways to draw you closer to him. And earlier this year, my ex-husband relapsed. It was always a very difficult relationship. I don't want to go into all that, but it was hard to live with him. It was very hard. It was hard. It's hard to live with me. I'm hard to live with too. We definitely triggered each other in a lot of interesting ways that we're actually still talking about through, he's in treatment right now, and his case manager is asking me for a history. So that's something I've been doing this week. It's been very difficult to revisit and provide this information, but I've chosen to be in this role, and that's okay. But what happened in May, so I meet this guy, 2016, I'm 50, he's 51. And I had been single for a really long time after my marriage, because I was very, very busy with my 3 kids. There were 3 different schools. One of them had special needs. Sometimes I worked, sometimes I had a business. I mean, I was just way too busy. And every time I did try to date anybody, and they'd want to talk on the phone at 10 o'clock at night after I'd gotten all the kids to bed and everything done. It's like, I don't want to talk to anybody right now. Like I just literally was so exhausted that I never had a chance to really even pursue anything. So when I met this person, it just, it was a classic AA thing. We were engaged by the time we were dating for 4 months, and, all that stuff. We didn't live together for a year though. So there you go. That was definitely not like, the joke in AA. If you're new to AA, how do you know a second date in AA? The moving van in the driveway. Yeah. But after being alone for so long and going to going to Catholic school, taking my daughter, and everybody else is still married, and then I finally find someone that it feels like he's for me. And it was my life. I mean, I pictured the rest of my life with this person. And in May, like, so many things happened that it was like I was ripped out of my own life. It was extremely painful. I mean, literally. And I'm in service at a newcomers group that meets every day. And I love this group. And so many of the people there are new. And I'm going to tell you, I talk about the AA triangle a lot in this group. So the 3 sides of the triangle are unity, service, and recovery. If you've never heard about this, okay. So if you stay in all 3 sides, so unity, that's the fellowship, that's being part of a home group, letting them get to know you, getting to know them, not doing this thing alone. Service, that's where I'm helping other alcoholics. I'm getting out of myself. I'm calling newcomers. I'm sponsoring. I'm speaking. I go in a fulfilled service position at my home group. I'm getting out of myself. And then recovery is the step work, out of the book, developing a relationship with a higher power through the steps, that kind of stuff. And if you're in all, and be in all 3, there are many, many years that I was not in all 3, but this time I have been for the last couple of years. I sponsor a lot of women. I'm involved with my home group. So this thing comes along, and I'm devastated. I'm crying. I'm shocked. I mean, everything, all of it. It's been a long time since I've gone through this kind of pain, especially sustained pain for like 4 months. And I'm really big on the book and the steps and service, but it had been a long time since I had leaned on fellowship. And I forgot that when I'm in the pit of despair, and I'm literally feel like I'm being stabbed 1,000 times in the chest, I don't want to pick up the phone. But here, God put me in this group where I'm in a daily home group. Who knew I needed a daily home group? And I would feel left out if I didn't show up every day. We do this cool thing at the beginning of the meeting where we have people under 90 days announce their days. And I would really feel like I'd miss out if I didn't go, to see who's adding up their days and who's joined. And also because I do this, I help, I'm one of the people who does we have 13 service positions that we pre-schedule each week. And so I like to get to know people so I know who I'm putting in service and stuff like that. And there were so many days I would get on the meeting on my phone, off camera, because I'd been crying. And I would just hear these people lifting each other up, loving each other, supporting each other, talking about who was getting sober when, all this stuff. So many people reached out to me, sent me messages, checked on me. I was part of a home group years ago, but it was very top heavy. It was very I don't know, this was really a different experience for me to really lean on the fellowship, and people knew, and one night in August, my ex tried to get sober a couple times, and I've also never been on the front lines of somebody else's disease like this before, and what it means that they do, and the lies, and the there's a lot there. There was a lot there, and there was a night in August where I found something out that was very, very painful, and I came home, and I was caught. I could cry talking about this, and I started calling people, and no one answered. And I thought, I'm either going to get drunk or hurt myself. I finally got someone on the phone, and I bawled. I mean, I howled for an hour about what was happening. And I made a decision that night. I said, F no. And I said it loud, saying the word, I am not going to let this take my sobriety. And one of the thoughts that ran through my head was that people are watching me now because I'm involved in service in AA. I sponsor women now. They're watching me. They're going to see how I get through this. I did not ever think like, oh, I definitely didn't know this was going to happen. Any of it. I didn't know that I was going to feel like I was ripped out of my own life, and go through this pain. But like, I am so grateful that I was in all three sides of the triangle when this happened, because I'm going to tell you what, it was August 16th, and that drink was right effing there. It was right there. And I have alcohol. Okay. My brother works for a company. They send us these collectible bottles of whatever that I save for my kids, and I've never been tempted. It's not something that I've had a problem with for a really long time, I mean, I don't think I would open any of those, but to cry, it was like, if I wanted to, it's right here. But it was terrifying to me. Like, it shocked me that it was so close. And being an active service to a newcomers group, I see people relapse and struggle with this, and they come back, they keep coming back, but it's like they'll go drink again and come back, and they're struggling, and you can see what's happening. You observe that, you see when they stop coming, and then they're not in touch with anybody, and you can see this progression. And if you're here today and the compulsion has left you, if you're here, just throw everything you've got at this thing. It's so worth it. I love my life. Oh my God. If I want to know what my life would be like drinking, all I have to do, I don't have to look very far. Remember what I mentioned about the assault charge earlier in this talk? Yeah, I'm the only person. My dad's still sober. He's not in AA, but of my siblings, I'm the only one who's sober. And I haven't always been a perfect mom. In fact, I definitely had my dry drunk years where I was yelling a lot, always tense, always stressed, very attached to all the outcomes out there, But I've been able to make amends with my children, talk to them about it, let them know, that was wrong, and work on that with them. And two of my children are adults, and we talk a lot about all that stuff. My daughter, the middle child, had the classic middle child thing. The older kid needed attention. Then once we got that kid situated, then I got pregnant with my younger child. It was like she got shafted. And since the older child had the special needs, she didn't want to burden us. So she learned how to get real quiet, and we've talked about that and feel like her needs aren't important. And we've done a lot of work on that together, talking about it, helping her find her voice. I have an open communication with my kids. And they have told me their parents never talked to them. I said, I'm so glad you talked to me, Mom, and helped me and guided me. So I can, and now I can help my friends who their parents never talked to them. I always wanted to be sober for that reason. Even before I had children, I wanted to cut the cycle in my family. I knew what I was doing. And when it was hard, that's what I would think of, is my children, my future children. Since I got sober, I had my first child about 29. I got sober at 21. But I would think about that because my parents were so absent in my life. And it was such a lonely childhood. And I knew that I wanted to give my kids something different. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that that's gotten to happen. I'm very lucky. But I still struggle constantly with the self-will and the old behavior and the character and, you know, what feels comfortable in my brain, just running rampant on, you know, anything that, I mean, I was in anxiety today. I had some stuff going on. You know, I had to write that history for the case manager at the treatment center for my ex-husband. Oh, I helped my ex-husband get into treatment. He's at the center that was started by Mark H. in Texas for chronic relapsers. He'll be there for 3 months. And I'm so grateful. But it's also like after I got off the phone with the detox guy and this man's now in a safe place, I just started crying. It was like, okay, so now you're back to you again by yourself. And it's interesting when you have a long history in AA, but you realize that you don't have support. Like I have an Al-Anon sponsor from a few years ago. She's awesome. We talked. We had a nice little chat, but I realized I really needed some recovery in our sister program. Like I needed somebody to help me, like really actually with solution, you know, like just like we get here. And what was really cool, and I think she's still here, is I literally went to my phone. I could feel it. I was like, I don't have support for this role that I'm in, and I need support. I knew it. I could feel it, you know. And so I went and I searched in my messages, Al-Anon, the word Al-Anon, and I found, I think Lori's in this meeting right now. And I called, I mean, she said, you can call me. And I started crying because it was like the minute that I felt like I had a place where I could talk about what was going on, then the spring, it's like, if you heard people talking about holding that spring down, it's like I was holding all this stuff in because I didn't have a place to bring it. And even though they have the same 12 steps, I'm in a first step in that program right now. And I need help with that. You know, and I'm very serious about this. I don't want to lose this. This is not something I want to lose. I don't want to lose my sobriety. And I know now, you know, that it says we have to continue to grow. And I felt it and I recognize the signs. It's time for me to reach out and find support for the role that I'm in here. And that's Al-Anon. There's a lot of options, which is confusing, but I'm doing some other work too that I needed to do. I found out this summer some more things about my childhood, that because now at 56, you know, and being honest and transparent about what's going on, you know, that rigorous honesty, you know, there's a lot of things this summer that I did and that happened that I let myself listen to my own inner voice speak, you know. There's a day that I thought that my ex-husband and I were going to get back together and work things out. And then he flipped and left and then didn't answer my texts or calls for 3 days. And by day 3, I felt like I needed to be in a hospital. And I listened to that and I was honest about it with people. I don't think I could have done that at a younger age. I wouldn't have wanted to admit it to anyone. That's embarrassing. Something's wrong. As an alcoholic, I can't afford that anymore. I have a deadly disease that will kill me, and I believe it. And I tell newcomers, the first thing you got to do, find out if you're an alcoholic, because if you are, the news isn't good. It's not going to get better. You're not going to be able to control this drinking thing, you know? We were making jokes one night at the newcomer group saying to this one guy that was brand new, hey, didn't you know we've all figured out how to control our drinking? That's the real secret. And we were just totally joking, like, of course, but this guy's face was like, what? You know, like, no, of course not. That's not the case. But I know that for sure. Like, and I need to know that because when it comes time for me to continue to do work here and get honest and get help and continue to pursue my recovery, I need to know why I'm doing it. You know, or I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to sit over there and watch Netflix, you know. And I'm so grateful that I do feel like I am awake today. Oh, the other thing, to not give myself any shame or judgment, because if I do, I love, there's a phrase, I guess it's a reading I'm not a huge fan of it. It's in acceptance. But if I criticize even myself, I'm criticizing God's handiwork, and I have to be gentle and let the process play out. And I'm so lucky I have people in my life today who encourage me to live my truth. You know, my sponsor, she comes from she likes I guess the fellowship of the Spirit. You know, she says, I'm not your God. I don't know what experiences you need to have. And I am an experiential learner. Definitely. And that's also how I found my God. I was going to tell you a story, quick story. I always wanted to understand the God thing and what's going on in step 3. And it says, as we understood him, does that mean I need to understand? Well, I still don't. Okay, well, we'll just pretend like I do, and I'll just keep moving forward. Here's what happened. When I got busy in all 3 sides of the triangle in AA, the first thing I did was I started sponsoring people. And that's the first time that I actively started working. I would pray to God when the wheels would fall off my life, but actively doing it every day and like looking for God, or, you know, I would sit there and meditate, and it's like, what's the point? For me, my spiritual experiences happen when a sponsee asks me a question and I don't know the answer. The first time it happened, this woman called me from California, and we were real close to thinking that we need to call the emergency services. She was hopeless. She had drugs in her, she was prescribed drugs. She had all this stuff going on. And I thought, oh my God, I'm out of my depth. And I started texting my sponsor, and she didn't answer. And so I just threw a prayer up. And what I got back, I literally got this knowing back. It said, she called you, give her your experience. And what came out of my mouth was to talk about the AA triangle. I said, when my life sucks, it's usually because I'm not doing something in some part of the AA triangle. And she started laughing, and she said, oh my God, you're so right. I haven't been. And another time I was in a home group situation, and this woman had bullied me at a home group meeting, and then later on asked me for help. And I'm telling you, at the time, my little ego in my head, because I've been bullied. And we were going to have this Zoom training session with some people that I liked. And now this woman wants to come. She's going to ruin the whole thing. She, you know, I just felt all this panic inside and this fear. And then my ego's like, I don't want her to come. She doesn't have to come. This whole thing was going on in my head. And I'm laughing at it because I'm like, okay. Because I'm learning about this being awake thing and paying attention to all my thoughts now, right? Instead of just being in the reaction to life. Guys, I never could get the pause. I never could figure out why. Well, it's because I wasn't paying attention. Now I'm paying attention. And I know I'm supposed to be loving, tolerant, kind, all these good principles, right? And this thing took all day. I can make this story really long, but we don't have time. But basically, when I went to answer her, I literally felt a tap on my shoulder, and it was make her feel welcome. So I told her to come to the session. Please come. We'd love to have you. And later that day, she reached out to me personally and told me that she'd been sent home from work, that she was alone. She was so lonely, and she was going crazy. That's the God. That's the spiritual experience. That's God showing up. And when I go and I get into action in this program, God shows up for me. He meets me halfway. And I never did understand, or it wasn't something I could pre-plan seeing or anything like that. But just to leave you all, I really do believe that this solution works, and I believe that it works as a way of life. Like it says in the book, it says it over and over in the book, that this is a way of life that especially works when life is hard. And I have lived that this summer and fall for sure. And every single day, I just ask God, what do you want me to do? Because I have to, because I'm really uncomfortable about this ongoing situation. You know, it's uncomfortable. It's something I've never experienced before. I don't have any knowledge, and I'm still working on getting support. I just love you all so much. I'm grateful to be here. I'm really grateful that whatever I did was enough for me to still be here, because I really do treasure and value my sobriety. If you have a sobriety date, hold on to it. I love when speakers say that. Thank you so much, Phil, for having me. That's it for me. Thanks.